Hi there, welcome to the RevOps Show. As part of working on many CRM implementations, we hear a lot of reasons why people just aren't using their CRM. Whether it's about the tools, the data, or the processes themselves, there's always a reason the CRM is not being used. So today, Doug and Jess decided to take 5 of the top common reasons that they hear and share how to tackle those challenges head on. By the end of this episode, you'll have the ability and practical strategies to get your team fully leveraging your CRM. And with that in mind, let's get into it.
Jess, it's an exciting day for you.
You're happy. I hope you're happy now. I hope you're happy how
we're gonna get hit if you keep playing that.
Me too.
What do you mean? I'm driving revenue for them.
We're gonna get hit by copyright. I mean, the marketing campaign has been robust, so
how do you know that I wasn't paid to do that?
It's very possible you were.
The RevOps Show, sponsored by Wicket.
Oh my God.
Okay, that probably got us in trouble.
Yeah.
That probably got us in trouble. So, Jess, I know everyone is sitting around waiting
for my review.
Waiting for your review, yes.
Yeah. So I think, what did I say, about six or 7 stars is what
You said you were going to be disappointed. Let's not.
Yeah.
You said I know I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I was wrong. It was great.
See, I knew you were going to like it.
Movie's great.
You talked down your expectations so much so that you could only, as long as Ariana Grande hadn't thrown up on herself, you were going to be happy.
So it actually made sense. The movie is 2 parts. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I was one of the people that was pissed off.
My gosh, this is you flip-flop.
Yep.
What was it
100%.
that John Kerry said? I voted for it until I didn't, or I didn't vote for it until I did, or something. That's what this sounds like. It makes absolute sense. Of course it makes absolute sense.
I was halfway through the movie and I was like, is John Chu gonna land this plane? And he did. And he did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what'd the kids think? You took the kids, right?
The kids liked it. We learned that Isabella has a bad reaction to IMAX screens.
Really?
So she was not feeling well by the end. But she enjoyed it. She said it was worth her not feeling well. And Elena did not get up and leave or fall asleep. And her being 8 years old, sitting through a over 2.5-hour movie is she was captivated the whole time, didn't complain.
So what was the highlight of the movie for you?
The highlight of the movie. I mean, it's probably the end-defying gravity, but yeah.
So I told you there would be surprises. Did you enjoy your surprise today?
I did enjoy my surprise today. Yes.
Now, I hear that Wicked has spurred quite the controversy, quite the tribal debate.
About?
Is it okay to sing, or do you shut?
Oh, yeah. There's signs everywhere. We didn't have this in our show because I was at a preview, so I guess they hadn't had this problem.
Well, apparently the leader, like going into it, there's no talking. Like there's the movie.
There's signs
part of the movie.
that say
but also in the pre-roll.
We didn't get that in our showing.
But apparently people in previews are getting up and singing, and there's a whole TikTok debate going.
So people were dressed up.
And you know me and TikTok. I mean, we are like TikTok and me are like that.
People were dressed up, and there's actually 2 people who I know are like local influencers trying to be influencers that I saw at the screening I was at. I was shocked people weren't singing because I anticipated people were going to sing.
But what side of the debate do you come on? Is it okay to sing or is it not okay to sing?
You know, it's not I'm torn. Like the thing is,
how can you be torn? There's a clear, distinct, unequivocal answer.
You don't sing.
Shut the fuck up.
You don't sing, and the thing is that they've put signs out saying, so they're releasing a sing along on Christmas Day.
Correct. Yep.
There are signs now out at all the theaters saying, please do not sing at this showing. If you would like to sing, there will be a Christmas Day showing where you can come and sing to your heart's content. The thing is the other thing is that people don't realize the songs are heavily broken up. So they sing a verse and then there's dialogue and then they say That's not what happens in the stage show. So people are going to sing and you're not going to be able to hear actually important parts of the movie, the song, but also dialogue to the movie.
How much is a ticket to that movie? What is it like?
My IMAX ticket was quite a bit of, I think it was like $22.
Oh my gosh. I remember, Jess, I think the first time I saw Bruce Springsteen, it was $22.
So I've been to concerts that were $20. Yes, I'm with you. It's because I went to IMAX though. Like that it was $22.
But what's a regular, like when you go to Alamo, what's it?
Like probably 15.
Yeah, probably $15, right? Here's what I would say. I would say when I pay $15 to listen to you sing, you can sing. Until then, shut up.
No, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
Unequivocal.
We're not there. We're there to see Ariana Grande fall over herself and also sing and hear her sing.
I'm sorry, who sings this song?
Yeah.
Well, let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
That's the school I got. Like, to me, there's like like the fact that this is a debate.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was a debate. I've seen the pictures of the signage up at theaters.
So I read about it in USA Today a couple days ago, and it was actually on the Today Show this morning. They had a segment on. Now, I want to know why the Today Show doesn't get paid for those segments, because all they're doing is just promoting.
Yeah, no, I know. But yeah, no, because I don't like when. So I've actually been to a Wicked production where there were people in the audience singing. You don't sing at a live theater show. You should.
Now, if you want to throw a wicked party. Oh
my God.
My Boston accent sucks. I'll admit that. It's
okay. Yeah. Good. I'm glad we're acknowledging that.
Oh, I one of the things I'd love to be able to do is voice impressions. I can't. I can barely impersonate my voice. So Jess, I think this is a great segue into what is it that we're talking about today? What are we RevOpsing about today?
Why don't people use
the
CRM?
RevOps Show, brought to you by Wicked.
Oh my God, we're gonna get sued. Why don't people use CRM?
Actually, the RevOps Show being brought to you by the Revenue Acceleration Framework, available at booksellers everywhere, so long as they're online.
We're off to a great start.
The award. You're the one that moved this to First Thing Friday morning.
I am. And
right,
we both had our coffee, clearly.
The award-winning, best-selling Revenue Acceleration Framework. By the way, it got bought in another country.
What country?
I don't remember actually, and I was looking at the report, and it's like because it had always been like 12 countries, and it's now up to 13 countries.
Oh well, we got to find. I want to know what the 13th country is.
Wataneo. No, I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll find out. I'll figure it out.
What we're talking about today,
we're big in Spain, by the way.
Oh my God. We will get to the topic, I promise.
Okay, what are we talking about? I'm ready. I'm focused now.
For the third time, what we're talking about today is why don't people use CRM?
Because why would someone use CRM? Well, there's one reason why. I mean, it's really easy. There's somewhat of a caveat because I'm actually dealing with an organization right now that is using CRM, but there's a lot of enforcement. Like I can tell that there's a lot of, but it still falls into it. If it's easier to use it than not to use it, then I'll use it. If it's that's not fair because it's always easier not to use it. If it's easier to do my job using it, then I'm going to use it. If it's harder to do my job, then I'm not going to use it. Mm-hmm. I know we're going to like debug a lot of the, what are the excuses? What do we have? Like the top 5 excuses or top 6 or something of top why 6. People say,
yeah,
well, I know I need CRM here, but my team's different. They're just not going to use it. That's how they sound when they say it too.
Yeah.
Back to my my voice impressions.
So do you want
to hear my Richard Nixon?
No, I really don't. Okay. I really don't.
I won't go there then.
So I've pulled the top excuses that I hear. So do you want me to go through all of those, or do we want to go one by one and unpack them?
I think we go through each excuse.
Okay.
And but I think you should shake up the order.
I'm going to.
I don't think you should go top to bottom. I think you should go to like what's the number one.
Yeah. So the number one
because just sometimes I get wordy, and so if we go long, that way we've covered the top reasons.
So
Whoa.
Friday morning. So the number one and possibly my favorite is I have my own system, usually an email or a spreadsheet, and I don't need a CRM because my system is that good and it works for me.
So that's an individual person. That's an individual reason more than it is like organizationally, the head of the company or the head of. But I mean, my answer to that, honestly, is how big are you?
Yeah.
Right. If you have 2 or 3 salespeople and you're using spreadsheets and it's working, you know what? I'm okay with that. Right. I'm a believer in CRM, but I'm not a CRM zealot. Right. Here's the question. First off, are you meeting your targets? Right. As you sit here today, what's your confidence level that over the next 3 years you'll continue to meet your targets? Are you delivering the sales experience? Because by the way, the customer experience begins before the first impression, right? Are you organizationally able to do the things that you need to do? And as you sit here and you think about the next 3 years, if you have a confidence level greater than 75% that you're on track that there's no compelling dangers to meeting your targets over the next 3 years and where you need to be over the next 3 years, then I mean, there's something to be said for if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? You didn't expect this answer, did you? You didn't expect that I was going to come out of the gate and go.
I didn't actually.
Well, now here's the thing that I would challenge you. I would ask you the question: is it really working? Is your system really working? Right? How much time are you actually spending on your system? You know, and this is where it's be honest with yourself. Now, once you get above 5 salespeople, if you tell me, oh, well, we're using spreadsheets and it's working and we're fine. Well, okay, that's great. I'm glad, you can lie to me, but please, whatever you do, don't lie to yourself, right? It's not working at that point. You're not providing a consistent experience. Things are falling through the cracks. And here's the thing, right? As much as I believe that salespeople will continue to be a core, you're going to like this. As much as I believe that salespeople are going to be, a core part of sales processes until they're not, right? Which by the way, I say that for the foreseeable future, sales-led growth is still going to be a major element for anybody selling higher average sale value, complex offerings, et cetera, right? Remember, a complex sale is not necessarily a sale that is complicated. A complex sale is a sale where there are multiple people involved in decision-making. And the job of the salesperson is as much facilitating the conversation and the track within the organization. If you want more on this, read the Challenger Customer. Not the Challenger Sale. The Challenger Sale touches on that a little bit, but the Challenger Customer really gets into that part of how companies make the complex buying decision. As much as so what I'm saying is I believe they're going to be there. And for all the people that are calling on, nobody wants to talk to salespeople. Take a look at the actual studies that show that to understand what it's really getting at. But like, I can't tell you that unequivocally AI is not going to displace sales as we know it. I just know that it's kind of like the big thing of change. Change happens in an instant. Sometimes it takes 100 years for the instant to occur. But when the change happens, it happens. It's unpredictable. A shift like that is by definition going to be unpredictable. So if you're predicting it, but so as much as I say that the sales led is going to be a core part of it, the role of the salesperson is becoming a piece of an orchestra more and more. Right. So this might sound weird. It's not necessarily that the salesperson is going to get less important in it. It's just that the supporting, it's going to we're becoming much more of an ensemble drama than we are a star-driven drama.
Yep.
Going back to our theme here. I know I'm not allowed to, if I played the one song all the time, then I know I'll get in trouble. So I'll go with this one.
Not from Wicked, but same singer. So we're good.
There we go. You didn't know that I'm a big big fan, did you?
No, I didn't.
All over my soundboard.
Yep. All right. So I have
that's on the piece called Jess Soundbites.
There we go. Great. I have a section of the soundboard. Love it.
I have a favorite soundbite if you want me to play that one.
No, I really don't, because I think I know what it is. No, thank you. So I have so you said that was individual. I have kind of the company version of that, which is our team's old school. They don't want to use technology. They can't learn how to use it.
They're technology averse. That's my favorite one. See, that's my favorite. Yeah. I've got an old school sales team. They're technologically averse. Okay. So they don't use technology. They're technology. This is my favorite, right? They're technologically averse. They prefer to use spreadsheets. Okay. Last time I checked, spreadsheets are a technology. By the way, have you logged into a corporate system recently? You need a PhD. Actually. I mean, I know they talk about SSO but like to be able to navigate through someone's corporate layer.
We have a client who they've added quite a few sales reps in the past 90 days. And we get the questions about them being able to log into their system because they attribute us as IT because we manage HubSpot for them. And we get more questions about like, how do I log in? It's wild.
Yeah. So, the technology averse reason is we blame it on technology, but the problem is actually we've just done poor implementations, right? If you think about what are the three major reasons that CRM implementations fail, we blame that on old school, technologically averse. Or I'll tell you what they are more than they're technologically averse or averse to technology is they're information averse, right? Information has a currency to it, and transparency isn't often very fun, and especially when there's no clear process and there's no clear scoreboard and there's no clear which describes. I mean, all the reasons that you need CRM is why moving to CRM is a scary element because they're status quo biased. Right now, we've talked about change management in other episodes, and actually we just published a blog post on change management, which really gets into what you're seeing there is the whirlwind. You've tried to change too much at one time. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready. We're working on a sales structure and tech stack transformation for a company right now. And one of the things that I'm showing them, and there's some, like there's agreement with this client, still a prospect at this stage, but there's agreement with the client that it's needed. Mm-hmm. There's skepticism on the part of some of the key executives that it's doable, which by the way opens up the question: if it's needed, the doable question really should take a, okay, that means you got to figure out how to do it, right? Not let the fear of that. But legitimately, we've tried this before and it's never really worked. We've tried this before and we've seen improvement for 3 months, 6 months, but then it's reverted back to we've tried this before and we saw our numbers go down. By the way, this client has not said all of those things, but those are all things that we hear when we talk about CRM, when we talk about transformations and things like that. And that's completely fair. And that is because if you take a look at what they've tried to do in the past is they've tried to implement all of the change at one time. This is my favorite, by the way. This is the favorite second excuse, right? Well, my team is averse to technology, old school. Well, they're averse to change. We roll out a path and plan and we're like, okay, in the first 90 days, we're going to do this. In the second 90 days, we're going to do this. In the third quarter, we're going to do this. In the fourth, we're going to begin to do this. In the fifth quarter, we're going to begin to do this. So then they go, well, why are we going so slow? Why is it taking so long? Right? Can't we go faster? Can't we do this faster? And I'm like, okay, hold on a second here. Right? Choose which side of the river you want to be on. I can handle either one of those. But that's where we come in, is that we get in the way of doing their job. We're also not not staging and operationalizing the change that we're bringing in.
Right.
So change, which is by definition destabilizing, we're bringing in less than fully thought out. We're not building people down the ramp. That's what they're averse to. They're averse to changing 3 lanes in one go on a busy highway. So think about how and by the way, we're changing the technology without either clarifying or changing the underlying business process at the same time, right? I've seen people announce, look, we're going to launch using a CRM. We need you to use the CRM. Nothing else has changed. Well, that's not true. Everything has changed, right? And by the way, if nothing else has changed, then what you've done is you've created a resistance to what you're trying to do because things are not in alignment. And so this gets back to the prime directive, focus on the business process. And I absolutely promise you, if you're not using CRM, you've got flaws in your business process. The problem is you don't have the data. And by the way, I don't just mean like data as in numerals, as in metrics. I mean, there's qualitative data as well as quantitative. Like we're not able to see and to break down what is happening and why it is happening and where we're not able to form our hypothesis. By the way, that's the other thing that happens is we implement change without implementing hypotheses, right? So we change something and then we never think about it. It gets into the thinking of launch as the finish line. So those are all the real reasons, because the truth of the matter is, what's in the pocket of your old school salespeople? Now, I'll tell you what, if they've got a Nokia phone in their pocket, I will concede that they're averse to technology, they're averse to change, and maybe we need to. Now, you laugh at that, but you know.
No, it's my favorite example because I think you know this, the COO at a company I worked at, and this was years after, like 10 years after everybody still had the old Nokia brick, like the original. Those phones are indestructible. I fully believe.
Oh yeah, you can
and
drop the Mac truck over them, and they're
like
fully functional.
And he was responsible for our operation, like.
and by the way, when I talk about your Nokia phone, I'm talking about the Nokia phone doesn't have a camera in it.
Right. This is the phone I'm referring to.
Right. Yes, I know. So we actually had a client several years ago that did have a sales rep and was a power rep. I mean, had built a tremendous book of business, managed that book of business. And by the way, for someone who could simply rest on the book of business that they built, they were always number 1 or number 2 on developing new business as well. So just the salesperson that you wanted. And I mean, Spiral Notebook. That was his CRM. And I mean, he literally had a Nokia brick phone. And so you know what we did there? We hired a sales assistant who translated everything and put it into the CRM. Because you know what? He was producing more than 2 top reps. And I'm like, if you're producing more than 2 top reps, you do whatever it is that you want to do. I'll build the systems to support it. So, right. So we still got it in. By the way, he loved it. He got these reports. He went from Spiral Notebook to like, he had a weekly, like his assistant would put together a weekly briefing book of everything that was going on. His calendar was clear. There's a lot of ways to adopt CRM.
Yep. So the next one I want to talk about, and you hit on this and what you just talked about, but it's my least favorite to deal with in an implementation, which is we've tried this in the past and it hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, you have. That's my response. Yes, you have. I'm willing to bet that you're doing a lot of things today that you tried in the past and didn't work. So, okay. My suggestion there, don't do it the same way. Now, the problem I have with that excuse, I don't mind that excuse. What I mind is that's the pushback. And then they want to implement it. They're like, oh, no, that's not. Oh, no. What? Wait, why are we waiting 4 weeks why are we doing these deep dives? Why are we mapping the business process? It's like, well, hold on a second here.
Well, what's amazing is about this, and this is why it's very frustrating when you're implementing. So they almost want to do it the same way that it was done previously,
Mhm.
and it failed because it wasn't handled appropriately. And it's like, okay, guys, well, we're doing this differently because this is why it didn't work last time.
I say comfortably 75% of CRM implementations fail. They don't deliver on their objectives. 75% of CRMs are not creating value, right? What's that tell you? Well, it tells you the dominant way that people go about using and implementing CRM doesn't work. Now, it feels safe because it's normal. I mean, if I may give a commercial, the best compliment that we get is when people say it early with some degree of skepticism, and then they say it late with pride and you don't implement like other people do.
Yeah.
When we're dealing more and more with as we're getting in, we're enabling our clients to connect more of their systems, et cetera. We're dealing with others, and we have two clients that oftentimes say this to us. Yeah, I know. The problem is they don't quite implement the way you guys do. They don't manage the system, their systems the way you guys do. And then they kind of say I don't even know if they realize that they're saying it to us when they say it, because they kind of under their breath go, I wish they did.
Right.
Right. And I'm not trying to say I mean, Lord knows we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we also fall into the school of like, hey, if we do something and it doesn't work, let's change it up. You know what? We need a sticker, and I need to start saying more frequently, because this isn't considered enough of a Doug. This used to be on the baseball field. This was my like how you guys give me crap about G's for the squeeze.
I can't wait for
make an adjustment. Make an adjustment.
Yeah.
Make an adjustment.
And actually, so to hit on that point for a minute. So it's not just that, okay, the last implementation, this didn't work, so the next implementation we're going to adjust. We do that, certainly. But where we get more buy-in in the process from the customer is when we realize 8 weeks in, you know what, we need to make an adjustment now to what we're doing, because if we go this way, so we have we've done this frequently is probably too aggressive of a word, but we have done where we're like, okay, guys, we need to have a meeting. We were going to do this. We're going to do that instead. So
I disagree with you. I think we do it all the time. I just think it doesn't have to be like we do it on smaller things.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it never snowballs up to be the big thing. But this is, by the way, one of the reasons that we talk about why, I've had 3 presentations this week, so it's fresh. It's fresh in my brain. We map the business process. We then map that to the technology build. We build the tech. So what this does is, in essence, we're building your implementation on paper before we actually go into the system to build it out. That brings a couple of key advantages. The first one is we're able to stress test what we're doing, so we're not 17 steps in. And by the way, with technology, it takes you 3 times longer to unwind something that you've built than it did to build it in the first place. And that's on a new implementation. You can only imagine on an existing implementation. And I'll tell you, I mean, think about the times that we make a mistake on a change in configuration. I would say 70 to 80% of the time, it's because it was something that appeared to be small, and it was urgent, so we just went in and changed it rather than mapping it, reviewing it, then changing it, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to go slow. That doesn't mean that you have a 2-week QA process, but it does mean that you do things with a considered approach, and you're paying attention. We just got a great compliment on a roadmap delivery earlier this week of, I can't tell you how happy I am that we're viewing this in the holistic fashion that we're viewing it, right? We're not changing CRM or implementing CRM without paying attention to what the business process is and talking about where business process needs to change. And so I think that's another key element. Yeah, it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work I can promise you that one of the primary reasons it didn't work was you didn't follow the prime directive. You looked at it as a CRM implementation, not a sales implementation.
Yep. So let's talk about, and this falls into some of what we've already been discussing, but it's too difficult to use. The CRM is too difficult to use, so we're not going to use it.
So you know what's not easy? Selling. Sales-led selling is not easy. Because I'll tell you what, if the sales-led selling is easy, then you probably don't need a salesperson to do it.
As the person who had to cold call for a week and almost quit over
a week,
I concur. It was like 2 days. It was like 2 days.
I think it was supposed to be a week, and I think it was an afternoon. But I mean, there's a lot to manage, and you know, I've been thinking about it as we've been ramping up a new sales rep. And the data that we're storing and recovering, and the intelligence that we're going to be able to bring. You know, I'm gonna be able to have a conversation with them to talk about, here's how many conversations you've had, but only this number are meaningful conversations. Okay, so you said this was a meaningful conversation, but looking at this next piece, is it really a meaningful conversation? Like, let's talk about how we can make it more meaningful. Like, those are things, when you talk about it, like, it's not always, that's why I said it's not always easier to use than not use. Yep. The question is, are you able to sell more because of it? And having just finished some other assessments, one of the things we're noticing, and I think this is a great thing, we're noticing that like, the activity is back, people are moving forward, but rather than jumping into buying the technology, they're saying, well, let's do an assessment first so that we're clear on what right. So this has been really good because usually we start doing this after the CRM is implemented because of a timing element. Here, we're able to do it up front, really look at the data, what's there, what's not there. So I saw this with a new client, and actually with the business review that we just did. And what we're able to identify is because of how the CRM is being used, there's a significant amount of data that you're just missing, right? Because salespeople are waiting too long to begin to, right? Now, look, we make it like, for our implementations and people who follow our recommendations, we make creating a deal so extraordinarily easy, it's not even funny. Right. And one of the reasons is we want to get that signal of, okay, you're beginning to treat this like a deal. You're beginning to bring a focused action and activity. I want to see what's happening before it becomes truly a sales opportunity, because that's where my leverage is. That's where I can really use scalable assets, right? I think when we talk about it being too difficult to use, we're still in this old game of viewing sales through a numbers perspective. So we had somebody who said, I asked them the question, what's the barrier to you increasing your growth by 20, 25%? And he said, well, I think it's really pretty simple. I think, if we could just double, all we need to do, that's what he said, all we need to do is double the number of SQLs that we're generating. And I kind of, internally laughed. All we need to do is double the number of SQLs that we're generating.
Yeah.
And what he meant was, because, they're investing more in marketing right now, et cetera. And SQLs are all out there. They just need to be found.
Right.
And the reality is, again, as intent is there's a pretty structured level of high intent. You can't organizationally, you can't go to the market and change intent in any major way, right? In any direct way. There are sort of exceptions to what I just said, but generally speaking, I'm very comfortable with that statement. And by the way, when if you look at it through the lens of SQLs, and especially let's call it SQL yield, two things happen. As you generate more leads, the quality of your leads decreases, i.e. a smaller and smaller percentage have intent, and a larger and larger percentage of your leads are further from intent. And if that doesn't happen, then what typically means is you're not growing your lead volume. The other thing that's happening at the same time is your cost for acquiring a lead goes up. So you're spending more per lead for lower quality, right? If you don't adjust your yields, right? So my question is, what's preventing you from increasing your wins by 20%, right? And I'll tell you, one of the main places where sales organizations are missing the boat is, where are they spending time that they shouldn't be? What are the opportunities that they're pursuing that would be better off spent finding higher quality opportunities, right? And when that data is not in there, then, you know, all you can do is react to the market, right? And so getting that intelligence, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that keeping a CRM up to date has to be hard.
Right.
But yeah, it does take some work. There, you know, it is not completely effortless, but what it should be, and this is why I get concerned about, like, even if the AI promise of, you know, an AI driven CRM, even if that promise turns out to be true, that the AI can actually read your emails, listen to the transcription, though I do have to say, if it's really going to listen to my transcription, can the transcription please, like, spell out when I drop an F-bomb? Like, we need to know that. We need to know how many F-bombs per sale.
My God. Good Lord.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, like, you try to read a transcript and it's like, I know what was said here and I can't figure out what was said here.
Yeah.
But the AI is going to come in but like, even if that happens, like, my fear about that is, it like, that's okay if the AI can take the rest of the sale, because the AI is familiar with what's happening. The salesperson, if all the salesperson is getting is the output of it, then the salesperson is less and less aware of the thinking, and everything becomes more and more surface level. You get commoditized more. I think AI as an assistant, I don't like Copilot. I've thought about this more and more. I don't like Copilot. Because Copilot says it's my peer. It's not my peer. It's my assistant. It makes it easier for me to consume, but I still need to be driving it. The problem is, when we Copilot it, it's like, I mean, if you think about it, the Copilot spends more time actually flying the plane than the pilot does.
The pilot does. Yeah.
Right? The pilot's there in case something goes wrong.
Right.
I'm saying that if you're in sales led, it needs to be sales led.
Yep.
So that time keeping the CRM up to date in the things that you're doing it in a manner that is enabling, like, it's the thinking process. You know, everyone loves the quote from Eisenhower and others: plans are useless, but planning is invaluable.
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's the planning part of it. The output has a tenth of the value as the thinking that goes into it. And so yeah, I'll concede it is, part of the problem is, it's not as hard as it looks because it's new.
Right.
That's why I say, you know, do it 100 times, do it for 90 days. Let's take the action. Let's see what works. And by the way, this works when there's a hypothesis. Why are we doing this? I think far too often we're logging information with no one being clear on why we're logging it. So it becomes something that's not being used.
Well, that was the point that I was actually going to make. Is I find when we talk about it's too difficult to use, frequently it's that we don't have a clear process. And so it's the process that's unclear. It's the process that's difficult or cumbersome. And that gets equated to the CRM because that's where you're clicking buttons, so to speak. But it's really a process issue, not a CRM issue.
Yeah, and I think what they're really saying too is, I don't think that using the CRM is what's hard. I think, like, i.e. inputting into the CRM is what's hard. I think one of the dangers as the CRM starts getting used more is it gets noisier. And so, you know, separating the signal from the noise gets harder.
Yep.
Right. And so curating the CRM and utilization of the CRM is something that needs to be an important piece of the puzzle.
Yep. Right. So the next one I hear frequently is, if the data is not perfect, they're not going to use it. So either this could be everything from duplicate data to incomplete data to inaccurate information. If it's not perfect, they're not going to use it. So we need to totally and completely cleanse the data before we have anybody go in, which is unrealistic.
Well, the thing that's funny here, and I think you're representing a little bit of an extreme view here on it for purposes of illustration.
Right. Yeah.
But okay, if you want it, like if you want only clean data to be used, okay, we can dedupe, and we can dedupe quickly. Now, in the deduping, we're going to delete some records that you actually, that maybe weren't duplicates, or some records that you want to keep. So then they go, no, we have to make sure that, and I'm like, okay, well, wait a second. I thought you said if it's not clean data, then it's not going to be used.
Right.
And by the way, I would say, especially if cleaning data is important to you, am I allowed to drop another F-bomb, or do we cross the threshold? Chop the motherfucking data, right? Go ahead and chop it, because the goal early on is use. Because by the way, if clean data is what's driving this, and I delete some data that we want in there, you know what? That data is going to come back in. Oh no, you deleted a contact who's a customer. Guess what? They're going to come back in. I'm going to send them an email, and it's going to be there, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if it's a really good tool, it'll actually pick up some of the data that was in there anyways, right?
That was,
right?
And also the data that was inaccurate will probably now be accurate.
What, we've talked about, the myth of clean data. I saw someone who it was actually a really interesting post on LinkedIn about forecasting. The problem with it was the point that this person was making was the importance of how your data needs to be completely clean for forecasting to be effective. And I said, look, any initiative that you want to bring that requires clean data, that focuses on clean data first, okay, that's great. That's a wonderful aspiration, because you're never going to get there. I think this is where you go into the fact of, again, I think the problem there is the why's not clear. Why are you using CRM? What is the point here? What is the purpose here? But the goal is use. And here's the other thing. The more you use the CRM, the more there's going to be clean data. You know what else? The more there's going to be irrelevant or dirty data, because as you use something more, you're going to generate more noise.
Right.
Where you want to spend your time, again, is there's an input question, there's an access question, there's a curation question, right? We think of CRM utilization as input. By the way, I've always said, if you want reps to keep information in, keep the CRM updated, and you ask the rep, how did the call go? And you didn't, and there's a summary of how that call went in the CRM. If you're going to ask me how the call went, whether I use the CRM or not, then I might as well not use the CRM.
Yep.
Right. So again, it goes into how is it being used? And the whole data thing becomes, a grand excuse to not take action, right? The whole data thing becomes a grand excuse not to have transparency, to maintain my information fiefdom, which by the way, from the time that humans started to walk on the planet, we've had a natural element to hoard information. And if anything, this is more biologically programmed, because power went to the person. I don't know if power went to the person who had the information, or the person that had power just got more of the information. But there has been a direct correlation between access to information and power for most of human history. So there's an element that we're going against gravity on that. And that's why you've got to build the other systems. And again, what I want to emphasize is a CRM exists to be used.
Yeah.
And so if you don't build it for use, and it's not driving better use, you're not a soccer fan, are you? So if you watch any soccer game now, you'll see someone's always wearing, I don't know what it's called, it used to be called a sports bra, but now men wear them as well. Because there's sensors in there. They know the heart rate. They know how many miles the person has run. I mean, there are so many analytics that are tracked. If you go to a baseball game, they know the spin rate of the baseball. All of these things are being tracked. Why? Because they're being used, right? You know, my favorite explanation of this was Sean Doolittle, who was a closer for the Nationals, who was very data, was like, oh, that's all BS initially, and then became a huge fan because he got injured and all of a sudden his fastball didn't have the same zip that it had. And so he went to one of these more advanced, you know, in an effort of last resort, he went to one of these advanced pitching clinics that broke down, and they saw that, you know, what had changed was his spin rate, and there was a slight change in his release point and this and that.
Right.
And bringing those two things together. And his job on the Nationals now, he's the assistant pitching coach, is basically to work with players on applying the data that's being shared. Right. And so when you're telling me that, and by the way, I think what most of these all have in common is when these things are true, what you're telling me is you didn't build it for use.
Yep.
Right. When you think about it through the lens of what do we want our people to do, I think you change how you look at or use technology of any sort, including CRM, and that's the key to success.
Last one. Our team is on the road. They're not in front of a computer.
There's so many ways to utilize and manage and log that, you know, on the road. I mean, first off, if they're really on the road and it really matters, get them a freaking tablet. Right? I mean, you can get a tablet now for a few $100s. And if you can't justify a few $100s for how someone's managing things on the road, then, you know, I don't know. There are applications that are built if they're truly, you know, if they're walking factory floors and things like that. There's a lot of ways to manage to build for mobile. But here again, I got to tell you, I've always done this. And if you set up the CRM the right way, the CRM, like, there's an element of debrief, right? In some ways, I like this better. I like this better when I was doing more in the field, where I'd come down at the end of the day, I would summarize my calls. Here, it's so easy now for me just to move on to the next call. I've logged the key information while it's happening, et cetera. I never actually debrief it in my head and close it in my head. That pause and think, if you set it up correctly, actually is a really powerful, you know, we used to do call planners.
I remember.
We used to have to, like, the way we would get our expenses paid is we'd have to turn in our call planner and call brief. When it was, I mean, Miller Hyman built a sales training empire on call planners.
Yeah, I was a sales support person at a company where I had to file those.
I could never keep track of what was the blue sheet, the green sheet, the pink sheet.
Yeah.
But I always found value in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So build it into the process.
Yep. So I really have two main takeaways, and we've talked about them both on the show before. One is you need to make you need to build the CRM so it makes your job easier to do.
And I think the way you do that is build it for use.
Yeah.
How do you want it to be used?
I like build for use. I like build for use. Yeah. I like that a lot. And then second, the business process must drive the technology. So I think that's tied to all these in some way, shape, or form. If you don't have clear process and that process isn't driving what you're doing, you won't build for use if you're not doing that.
I think there's a third thing, and I think it's key.
Okay.
Make an adjustment.
Oh yeah, make an adjustment. 100%.
Always be adjusting. That's why. I mean, that's why RevOps is so important. That's why the RevOps Show exists, Jess, to support people in making an adjustment. I want a sticker, make an adjustment. I want a sticker for make an adjustment.
Hannah, you heard it here first.
I'm on the record right now. Make an adjustment. Make an adjustment, and you know what'll happen? The juice will be worth the squeeze. And as a result of that, you'll be saying no to shitty RevOps.
Till next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Thank you so much for listening in or watching if you're on YouTube. Don't forget to follow Doug, Jess, and Lyft on LinkedIn, and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel for the video version of the podcast at the RevOps Show. And if you have any inquiries about the show or any questions you would like to ask Doug and Jess, email me at hannah@lyftenablement.com. One big thing that I took away from this episode that we should all remember is that no matter why someone isn't using their CRM, there's always a way to integrate it into your processes to make it work for your team. And until next time, just say no to shitty RevOps.